practices. And I'm reading in the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita right now, where Krishna is describing how we are knowers. And the phrase, albeit very short, is gya, which is the cognate with our English word know, to know something, become aware of it. I'm also reading simultaneously a book about the history of knowledge, epistemology. How do we know anything? And there's been quite a wrangling throughout history of various philosophers who have tried to come to terms with how we know we even exist. And there have been myriad philosophies trying to explain the path of knowledge. Bhagavad Gita is very straightforward. As Krishna describes in the Gita, that we're in a field, this body, and we can know the field. And one of the ways we can know we're not our body is because we can know it. Means that we can look at it as an objective, just as much as you can stand back from a plant and look at it, or a picture and look at it and notice that, oh, the picture is beautiful, but I'm not the picture. So in the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes how knowledge means to come into awareness that I'm the knower of the field. And then he describes how there's a super knower within the field. There's two knowers. One of them is a knower of all fields. That's our sense of universal intelligence that connects everything and everyone. And then there's our individual awareness, which is that I'm aware of a small area. I'm barely aware, I must say, of even what's going on in this body. When things go wrong, then I become more aware of it. But it's not possible to know everything. That's because, as is described in the ancient wisdom texts, we're part of the whole. Just as there's sunshine and there are photons that come from the sun, which are individual particles of light. So we're like that. And then the sun as an aggregated entity, meaning it's the globe, it's the rays, it's the deity behind the sun that makes it shine. These all together are the whole. So as parts, we can know something, and that's important, actually, in the history of knowledge, coming through various schools of thought, like the skeptics had a philosophy that nobody can know anything, and we can't even know if we know that we exist. And up to Descartes, who said famously, I mean, the phrase has been around, I think, therefore I am, that his point was, you can become aware that you exist, and therefore you can be sure that you do. And it's not something that you have to speculate about. You can see it directly for yourself. And although the Bhagavad Gita and Descartes part ways in certain ways philosophically, there is a way in which, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes how we can become aware of our existence. How often do we do that? Well, depends on your lifestyle. Some people spend most of their life noticing that and living in that context of seeing, I'm not my body, I'm interacting with the world as an observer more than an active participant. In other words, as a friend of mine, colleague likes to say, we are the life within our body, and then we have what's going on around us, which is our life situation. And the two things are different. When we become fully absorbed in our life situation, it's as if we're carried away by watching a movie. If you've ever had that experience, you watch a movie and then you cry and then you're elated. And then at the end of the movie, the light comes on, you say, oh, what just happened? And in a similar way, each lifetime is a movie-like situation for us where we're observing our life situation, but we're different from that. So spirituality 101 is to be observant of the fact that we exist, and there are ample writings and teachings about how to come more into that awareness, but also about what our relationship is with the complete whole. And that's also something important, because when you go into a new environment, for instance, let's say you're going into, oh, I don't want to say shopping malls. I hate shopping malls. I resist going there, but maybe some park where there are many. Let me put in botanical gardens. I do better there. Botanical gardens typically have many different areas and various kinds of gardens, but when you go in, they give you a pamphlet. At least every botanical garden I've ever gone into, they make you pay, and they should, because it takes a lot to maintain those places. And they give you a little map so you can find your way around, and it shows you the various areas of the garden so you can navigate it and you see where you're starting out from. So it's important to have a concept of who we are, what our existential position is in this world. Where are we? And is there a goal to it all? So, one of the processes in the Srimad Bhagavatam, mentioned by my teacher who wrote a commentary to the Bhagavatam, is to become aware of your own existence. Notice that you exist. So we're going to try that for a minute. That may sound simplistic, but it's profound, actually, and it's recommended. So we have every right to try it out, right? Who can stop us now? We're already in the Zoom room, unless somebody gets a warrant to shut us down from trying to observe our own existence. So first, I'll start with a little bit of background music, hopefully. And let's go into a deeply meditative mode here for a moment. Just sit up a little straighter than you were a second ago. And if you'd like to use a mudra today, on your right hand, put your thumb and index finger together in a circle. And on your left hand, put your thumb and your middle finger together, so you're like this. And relax, close your eyes, and notice your breath. And as you exhale, let go and release. We hold on to so much, and we don't even know it until we take a moment to let go. Keep an alert mind, but slough off any of the concerns that you have, and just for now, be in this exact moment with no other obligations. No need to go anywhere, no need to fix anything, no need to talk to anyone. And settle into your breath for a moment. Even out the inhales and the exhales. And come into focus on your breath. There's a light on in your body, and it's you. You are consciousness, and consciousness is light. And just turn inwardly and notice that you exist. Notice that you're conscious, that you exist. Notice that you have free will to move your attention in any direction you wish. And right now, you're turning it towards your own existence and nowhere else. Let the natural world go on. Let the compost piles compost. Let the ocean waves run. but stay here in this moment and be aware of your own existence. Notice the light of your own consciousness. We say conscious awareness. You're different from a stone. A stone can't do this. And as consciousness, you are superior to your physical body. Physical body is like a stone. Your bones are stones. You illuminate the body, and as soon as you step out of the body merges back into the elements. You as consciousness never touch the material elements. You only cohort with them for some time. The consciousness that we are is ever present. We're only covered by different layers of matter. And take one more step to realize that your consciousness is part of a greater whole. Your body's going on automatically. Just like the natural world of which it's a part. And notice that whenever you need it, your intelligence comes to you like a gift. Everything's supplied. Everything operating through a higher power. And now, in your mind's eye, and silently, with unstruck sound only within your mind, you can pronounce the 2-syllable mantra, which means spiritual substance, spiritual happiness. Rama. R-A-M-A. See the mantra and hear it in your consciousness. And try to repeat it 3 times. And bring your awareness back to your breath. You can let go of your mudras and just wiggle your fingers a little bit. Rub your hands together. Come back into the sensation of your external body. We've been in your internal body, the mind. Open your eyes and come back into the Zoom room. Welcome back. So, I'd like to talk about a fish because this is one of the comparisons given in the ancient wisdom texts. See a fish walking down the street. You might imagine that. Want to maybe try to help him out. And to help him out, you'd give him a hat. What else could you give him to help him out? You could give him a bottle of sparkling water. Now, let's not go to water yet. You give him a sandwich or a pair of shoes, and he'll be happy, right? They're only fish food. Give him an iPhone 16, Caravinda said. You can try this experiment, but it's such a satisfying example that I'm about to give. At least it is for me, because you think of a fish when he's outside water, his very delicate skin starts to wither and dry because he's made for the water. And anything on land will not satisfy him. Definitely the hat. I don't even know how he'd fit it on his head. And what to speak of the iPhone? He doesn't have the digits to push the buttons and so forth. But as soon as you put the fish back in water, then there's a sense of satisfaction. In fact, there's ways in which people sometimes make videos. They have a fish. I've seen a fish got grounded and then somebody helps push it back in water and everyone says, ah, finally, he's back in his natural environment. So this is the idea of yoga. Yoga means how to get back in our natural environment, how to be back where we're naturally happy. It's not an artificial imposition on the mind. That is, happiness is not an artificial imposition on the mind. It's not an intellectualized position to be happy. And none of the emoluments of the body and mind in this world satisfy us, because when we're out of our natural condition, then we don't feel satisfied, just like the fish out of water. Can we see that fish? I mean, we've been talking about him so much. I'd like to see him. It's a nice picture.
Yes, a second. I'm just waiting for the.
Bring back the fish. We need a chant or something for JM to respond and bring back the fish.
Just a second. Yeah. I'm
Okay, everyone
sharing
take
my.
a break while we're waiting for the fish to come back. Talking about him made me thirsty. Just the first slide is good. It looks like you're working on the deck while you're talking. Oh, I see. He's got something special for us. You're so tricky, JM. Okay. I can see the slideshow, but okay,
Is this the
there's the
fish you're
first
looking
one.
for?
That's the one I really like because it just looks so accommodating, that whole environment for the fish, doesn't it? If you've ever been in a pristine place where trout, that looks like a trout or maybe a salmon, and they look so natural in that environment. And when they're swimming in the water, they look so natural too. What's more, my teacher used to say that fish is built for the water. So even if the fish was swimming against a strong current, it wouldn't be waylaid or deterred because of its natural constitutional body and its abilities. But if you put an elephant in a fast-moving river, it would be swept away, like the Ganges. Very swift currents come there. I visit the Ganges at least a couple times a year, and if you stand by the river, you can see it. It looks like it's moving slowly, but if somebody jumps in, you'll see they go downstream very fast. But a fish is built for the water. So similarly, we're built for another environment where we're naturally accommodated. Okay, let's see your great creation, that the innovation. He called an audible There it is. Oh, you're into AI now, aren't you? I could see what you did. He pulled an AI on us. So here's our fish friend in San Francisco with an iPhone 16 and a nice suit, but he doesn't look very well positioned compared to the last picture, right? Move back to the last picture. Let's vote. Which fish looks better situated? Number one, that's number one if you want to vote. And let's see number two. Manu, Radhakripa, Nirali, Vicky, Charles, Raj, Alish, oh, Elaine, Chandu, Magnus, Nicholas. Wow, everyone's voting the same way. It's a landslide. We go for the fish. So that's the teaching of the ancient wisdom text. It's very simple. There's a way in which, and somebody may say, well, how does the fish get out of water in the first place? Now we're getting into some heavy philosophy. Okay, here's how it lines up in the wisdom texts. In a very basic way, there's three primal energies. One is the internal conscious energy. We call it spiritual energy as opposed to material. And the next one is an external energy, which we call material. But there's a third energy, which is called marginal. And that's the nature of the self in this world, the Atma. So we're permanent personalities. It's not that we become merged and we lose our identity, but we are naturally part of the internal energy, the conscious energy. However, being conscious, we have characteristics, and one of them is free will. We can choose to go anywhere. And this is something that Krishna talks about in the Bhagavad Gita, saying, actually, we're a lot freer than we think. I saw a TikTok or I don't know the difference sometimes between a TikTok and a YouTube or whatever, but it was a video of somebody trying to let a little dog out of a cage that it was in, and it wouldn't come out, even though the door was open. In fact, that happens in the penal system. Sometimes people, they get so used to being inside the prison, they get conditioned to it. And even if they come out, they want to go back in because it seems more natural. So this is called conditional existence. When we misuse our free will to entertain the external energy, the material energy, and then we get caught up in it, we get conditioned by it, and we forget our real nature as being spiritual. So the whole purpose of yoga is to reintroduce us to our nature. So if you took that second fish that was in San Francisco and you brought him to that pristine little place, he might say, no, I don't want to go there. I like my life in my cramped little apartment in San Francisco, even though I'm trying to look cool here. So, okay, no problem, Elaine. Thanks. I'll try to make the recording worth listening to so you have something good to listen to later. So then yoga just means to reintroduce ourselves to that pristine environment that's much, much better than what we're in. And sometimes it takes coaxing. In fact, there's a story from Plato when he talks about how there were cave dwellers. He gives this analogy that the cave dwellers are sitting in a cave and they're looking at the back wall and there's fires behind them. So what they see on the wall is dancing shadows. And they take that to be reality. And they're so used to it that they just accept it. And one day, one of the cave dwellers somehow gets out of the cave and sees the daylight, the trees, the colors, all of the societies that are there, and realizes a higher reality. And then very excitedly comes back in the cave, but then upon coming in the cave and telling everyone there's a different world out there, they become disturbed and say, that's nonsense. In fact, they want to kill him. That was one of the analogies of exploring or people's reluctance to explore a higher reality due to conditioning. So the yoga process, especially bhakti yoga, is meant to reintroduce us to the water. In this analogy, it's our natural condition. Okay, I'll show a couple more slides and then hopefully it'll inspire some conversation. Anyone can bring up questions and philosophical points or a reflection. So moving to slide number 3, and the phrase fish out of water, if you do a quick search for it, here's a paraphrase of what it means. A person who feels uncomfortable or embarrassed because of being in an unfamiliar, incompatible environment. And the next slide describes what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, which is that the material world is a foreign environment for the spiritual beings, and we are spiritual beings. We're not our bodies, as we explored just a few minutes ago. We're consciousness. Matter is not conscious. Therefore, incompatible with matter. It's the properties of matter themselves, in that they're always changing, is frustrating. Although we've grown used to it and we have these ideas that, oh, you just have to accept it. But the ancient wisdom texts say, no, actually, the reason you're frustrated is because you're incompatible. And that's a good thing, because it's telling you something. It's saying that you have a higher nature. If you're in the desert and you find some gold, like a gold coin, let's say I have a friend right now who's walking across the desert. I don't know how he's texting me every once in a while, but somehow he is. And he wanted to go on a kind of walkabout to get himself together. So he's walking 700 miles across the desert. And he's halfway across right now and texting me. Let's say you're in a place where you've never been before or nobody's ever been. And then you find some gold coin sitting on the ground with an imprint on it. Then you might ask where it came from. So similarly, we have desires for living forever. It's one of the biggest movements I'm noticing nowadays. Everyone's trying to figure out how biologically you can live longer. There are seminars, there are books. In fact, one of them's called How to Not Die. Well, if everything around us is naturally dying, why is it my impulse to not die? Well, the ancient Vedic literatures say that's because you don't die. But when you identify with your body that's changing, and death is a final change, then you start to buy into the idea that I'm a material entity and I'm dying. But where does that urge to not die come from, since the whole world seems to be falling off from moment to moment? And so the ancient wisdom literatures say, if you find a gold coin in the desert where no one has ever been before, and then you'll say, oh, somebody has been here, and there must be a source to this. And if we find that urge within ourselves to live and not die, to stay young and not grow old and so forth, then look for its origin. Where's the origin of that desire? So the explanation given in the wisdom text is that the material world, external energy, it's temporary, it's always changing. We're not temporary. We're permanent. And there, that stamp of desire we have in us, like, I want to keep living. I don't want to stop. Even an ant has it. If you walk up to an ant and say, my dear ant, uh, I would like you to move to another location, then the ant will say, no, I live here and this is my place. Or what to speak if somebody accidentally is about to step on an ant, the ant will scurry to the other side of the person's shoe. I'm trying not to give a scenario where the ant gets stepped on because it sounds pretty sad. So every living being has this sense of self-preservation in a world that cannot be preserved. And that's where the incompatibility comes from. And it's good to notice that and embrace it, say the ancient wisdom text. Okay. So here's the axiomatic truth of the Bhagavad Gita is that we are not our material bodies. And that includes the gross and subtle bodies we have. Gross means bones, blood, all that stuff evaporates at a certain temperature and just goes back into its natural environment. It comes out as gray smoke and you get a little bag of ashes. And then there's the mind, the intellect, and the false ego. These are three subtle bodies. So we have two material bodies, two. Sorry, I showed you three. Two. One is the gross physical body, and the other one is our psychological body. That's the part that moves from the present body I'm in now to the next body. There's a science behind that of how we get the next body. It's an accommodation according to the way we've developed our subtle body, our mind, our intellect, and our ego. But I'm not going to go into that right now. But the main point is we are not our material bodies. That is gross or subtle. We're different from both of them. We're what's animating the body. As soon as the Atma, the spiritual conscious particle, leaves this present body, immediately the body starts to disintegrate, merges back into its natural environment, and all the elements go back to where they came from. I said I was going to stop at a certain point, and I may just do that in a minute. You skip the next slide, Jay. I'm going to number 7, and then this may be a point of conversation. Because 6 just says what I just, it's just a repeat of what I just said. But there are ways in which our incompatibilities rise to the level of being what we call miseries. And the wisdom texts say there are 3 categories of miseries we suffer as a fish would suffer outside of water when we're in the material environment. One on the left, first one called adibhautika. That means miseries inflicted by other living entities. Are there any living entities that you know of that inflict misery in your life? Now I'm inviting everyone to participate in the most fun exercise ever. Who gives you trouble or misery in your life? Which living beings? Rodent. Rodents for 500. Oh, we're doing miseries for 500. So mosquitoes are the most dangerous of all the little critters on Earth, actually, according to the World Health Organization. More people die from mosquito bites with mosquitoes who have diseases like dengue and malaria than anywhere else. People, relatives, cousins, 52 cousins to harass you from every direction. Anybody else? Yeah, well, we covered a lot. People, bugs, rodents, relatives, microorganisms. Very good, Victoria. Well done, microorganisms. So these are the adibotic. Adibotic means miseries inflicted by other living entities. And you may just notice, do a little homework and observe if any other living entities give you misery today, the rest of the day. Okay, ready for misery number 2? We're on miseries for 500. Adhyatmika. Adhyatmika is the middle one. It says miseries inflicted by the body and mind. Are there any ways in which you ever get misery from your body or your mind? Be specific for full credit. Fear, physical pain, stress, be more specific. Disease, what kind of disease? Name three diseases. Overthinking, cancer, yeah, two more. Jealousy, love. You guys are so deep. Okay, flu, thoughts, COVID. Yeah. We go on for all day because if I started more systematically and say, name all the diseases that start with A, and then we went to B, C, D, and E, we'd be here all day. So there are miseries inflicted by the body and mind. Sometimes the body gets an autoimmune, it starts attacking itself. I mean, there's unlimited ways in which the body and the mind, and you gave a lot of the mind's ways of giving us miseries. Ready for number three? It's called adidaivaka, miseries caused by nature. According to the Vedic conception, there's actually a well-organized system in the universe, and there are higher powered beings that run the ways of nature as yeah. So nature, let's name three ways nature might give you some kind of misery. Or three events, natural events that might cause you accidents, calamities like heat, earthquakes, acts of God, hurricanes. Yeah, there's something going on in Florida right now. The wind comes up, tsunami, lightning. I've been in two ice storms, major ice storms in my life, once in Dallas, Texas, once in Toronto, Canada. And it was interesting. All the electricity went out for 4 days. We had no heat. X-ray bursts. Wow. Wildfires, rain. We could be here all day, right? So these are the threefold miseries. And yeah, I said one more slide, but there's one more. A higher quality of life is possible, but not by material arrangement. And this will be a conversational jump off point. A higher quality of life is possible, but not by material arrangement. There is no way, say the Vedas, you're going to ever stop the threefold miseries because that's what happens when we, as conscious beings who are incompatible with the ways of material nature, we're naturally afflicted by all these various causes of misery. So there's no adjustment you can make to the material world that will get you out of those miseries. You want me to prove it?
Yes.
Okay. Only one person said yes. I need a quorum, otherwise I can't prove it. Come on, Charles. I need a little help over here. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Have you ever gotten in someone's car on a cold day and you're wearing your jacket because it was cold outside and you get in the car and it's a little warmer than your body's used to? So you're sitting there and it takes a little trouble to take your jacket off because you already put the safety belt on. So at great peril, you take the safety belt off for a minute, somehow jimmy your jacket off and hand it to somebody in the back seat, put your safety belt up back on. And what does the driver do? Turns the heat down. As soon as you take your jacket off, say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, it's so hot," and then turns the heat down, then you get cold. And if you put your jacket back on, person will turn the heat back up again. That's the way we go through this material world. We'll find ways to stave off heat, cold, various kinds of living entities like little germs and so forth that afflict us. They always find a way around it. And there's a way that we can never quite get it the way we want. And there's a fairy tale called The Princess and the Pea. And somehow estranged from her royal family at birth. The royal family wants to find the princess again and puts out an edict that those who would like to apply for the position of princess can come to the palace and prove their identity. So many come because who wouldn't want to be a princess? And they had a scheme to figure out who was the real princess. So they took a dried garbanzo bean, otherwise known as chickpea. You know, when they're dry, they're hard. And the royal hosts put it at the bottom of 7 mattresses. And then when the applicants came, they'd escort them to a royal guest room and say, here, you can sleep here on this beautiful bedstead, which was 7 mattresses, underneath which was a dried chickpea. And in the morning, so they would ask the applicants, so how did you sleep? And in succession, so many of them said, oh, I slept so well, so comfortable and quiet here. Thank you for taking care of me. And they would summarily dismiss each one until one day one came, slept in the room on the mattresses, and then upon being interviewed in the morning, how did you sleep? I couldn't sleep at all. What happened? There was something hard underneath me. And they said, aha, she's the princess, because ostensibly her delicate royal body was sensitive to that tiny little pea. So there's a way in which we're so sensitive as conscious entities. We just cannot abide the constant changing and ruckus of the material world. It just rankles us and disturbs our consciousness constantly. And you can't adjust to it. There's not a time at which you're going to find that one of these threefold miseries. Just do some homework and notice there's never a time when one of the 3 miseries is not present in our life. So the Vedas then say, take a hint. There's a different way of finding solace and rising, and that is you must rise above your identification with the material world. Okay, JM, I've been on a diatribe marathon here today. Let's see if we have some comments, questions, expand the conversation.
Yeah, there are a few couple of questions and comments. Questions. The first one is Rajiv. Did you have anything to say? You came off mute.
Nope,
Okay.
I'm good. Thank you.
Charles said, for the people problem, can we just ignore those who bring negativity into our lives and only invite in those who bring positivity? Is this recommended? Also, I can be a bit extreme, so how do I not take your response out of context? To which Magnus replies, if you ignore the ones that are negative, aren't you making yourself weaker? Don't we need to learn how to deal with the difficult to become more resilient ourselves?
What a nice question. What a great answer. Thank you very much, Charles and Magnus. You didn't set that one up earlier, did you? That's nice, nice. I notice with people, it's complex, our relationship with people, very complex. Because I mean, there's an old saying, we only hurt the ones we love. And sometimes the most difficult relationships or the most painful ones are the ones that are the closest. Sometimes people who annoy us from an outside position in our lives are easier to neglect than the ones on the inside who we're obligated one way or another to be with, or who we love and hate at the same time. So not so easy. But that's a whole seminar in and of itself, and one that the topic I love to talk about a lot, because I find that the way to a successful life really has to do with our relationships and how we're able to find ways to communicate in such a way that we can have deep relationships with the ones that have similar values, and also we can have respect for the other ones, even if we don't want to be near them. Okay, what else you got there, JM?
As she asked, how do we get out of these three miseries?
Well, what a great question. That's the answer comes in the next slide, and I'll just show it since the question came up. And you're going to like this slide. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words and an exclamation point for you to answer your question. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, jump back in the water. Keeping it simple, if we're fish out of water, how does the fish become happy again? How do we avoid the threefold miseries? How does the fish feel naturally satisfied, jumps back in the water? Suppose the dolphin's not technically a fish, but anyway, there's ways in which, even as we live in this environment with the threefold miseries, we can adjust our lives. One way through conception, the way we're looking at the world, or perception. Another way, that is our conception of life, of what life's for. Another is our habits, another is our principles. And this is an important point because all suffering comes from our minds. And when we're able to adjust our minds properly, proper conception, proper habits, proper principles that we live by, we're able to live in such a way that we're not affected by the threefold miseries. They're there, but they don't act the way they do when our conceptions are that we are this material body, that we're here permanently, and that our duty in life is to adjust ourselves so that we can become happy. And conception, this world is ... not my final destination. It's just like if you jump on a public transport and somebody takes the seat you wanted to sit in, you can start a row. You know what a row is? It's a brouhaha. You can start a argument and get into a fight. I've seen it before. I was standing on a train stand once in South India, and it was a hot, sweltering night, and people were cutting in line, and then a fight broke out. It's just so funny because we're all going to get on the train eventually, but a fight broke out about who was standing in front of whom and so forth. If this life isn't my final destination, there's a way in which we can really adjust to a lot of what happens to us here because we're not thinking it all has to fit because it doesn't. And the second conception is the world is a classroom. And we're meant to learn something from everything that happens to us, all circumstances. Then the next category is habits. And the first habit that the wisdom texts say that you should master is the way you speak. Interesting. Speech is the gateway to all other good habits, or I should say mastering speech, perfecting speech. And so the Bhagavad Gita says, be truthful, speak in ways that are beneficial, avoid speech that offends. And by the way, there is a way to give practical or constructive criticism if that's your job and you have to do it for your kids or those who are signed up as your apprentices in one way or another. And also to repeat mantra. Mantra means there are spiritual phrases that raise our consciousness, that purify our consciousness, that realign us. That's a thing, actually. And so if you align your habits, change your habits, adjust them so that you have progress in your life, you'll notice that you can rise above the threefold miseries. And you'll start to feel that your human life is very useful because it gives you the opportunity to do that. That means to improve yourself. Okay, I have one more, but there's more coming in I'm really torn here, JM. Give me what's happening on the board. And then we'll go to the last slide in just a minute.
Yeah. It's Charles says it's the simple things that's deep. All suffering comes from our minds. And he says, seriously contending with that statement and how to rise above that problem.
Yeah, thanks, Charles. That's what human life is meant for. It's called a Tato Brahma Jignasa. We should use our intelligence to figure out, first of all, we're suffering. Second of all, that there's a solution to it, and then applying ourselves to the practice that helps us to rise above it. That's a very useful use of valuable human life. Okay, Jam, go ahead.
James commented, I'm considering that the challenges or challenging people in my life are there specifically for a mirror of my own deficiencies. And I need to start thanking the messenger, teacher, and respond in love, attempting to align my perception like this more presently.
Way to go, James. Nice stuff. Very powerful. Your mate is your mirror, and those around us who are triggering us in different ways, we can notice that it's something within us that's making that happen. Magnus,
Um,
what do you want an example of? Or are you asking James?
yeah, and James responded back saying, my children, while I love them immensely, my reactivity to their interruptions, naggings, but seeing it as a desire for closeness and love as opposed to irritation.
Nice. Yeah. There's a art to living that Christian talks about in the Bhagavad Gita that amidst the changes, amidst the miseries and so forth, there's a way to rise above them by elevating our consciousness. That's where it all begins. It's all an inside job. And there are practical means by which we can do that. Okay, the last slide, and that is principles to live by that help us to reconnect with the spiritual environment. One is to remember how I do is more important than what I do. This is one of the main messages of the Bhagavad Gita, is don't work for self-satisfaction or even for the reward, work out of service. And when you working in service, you're not asking for anything material as a reward. Naturally, the rewards are abundant in any case, but don't be concerned with those. Be concerned with offering whatever you do as a service to the Supreme. That's what the Bhagavad Gita says is called yajna. And by yajna, working in that way, not only do you make yourself impervious to the threefold miseries, but you also feel quite deeply satisfied by whatever you're doing. And another principle is my integrity is my strength. What is it that we do when nobody's watching? When we're able to stick to our noble plan, even when we're not in the public eye, we feel so satisfied inwardly that there's a natural connection to our nature as part of the noble whole. And now the room's open for 3 minutes of comments. I need to hear a human voice.
You can unmute and ask your question. Go ahead, Charles.
I have a question. Yeah, this is just going back to one of the points that came up earlier, maybe about, being irritated by certain things. What if the message to ourselves is to, learn how to sort of stand up for ourselves and communicate in such a way that can then, get the other person or the other thing to stop causing irritation for you or problems for you, right? Like how should we think about that between, it's like I think there's kind of a line, there's a point where you sort of need to defend is a strong word, but stick up for yourself, right? To deter
It's the
future issues.
It's the main lesson of the Bhagavad Gita, which you've read, right? And on the cover of the Bhagavad Gita, you see that Arjuna is going into battle. What's he standing up for? Dharma. In the history of the Mahabharata, there were usurpers who were really bad people, and they wanted to violate the code, which is don't steal other people's stuff. And they had usurped the Pandavas' rightful claim to the throne, which they had inherited and their property, and they were righteous. But Duryodhana wanted to take it away. His father, Dhritarashtra, even though he knew it was wrong, he supported his evil son. And they tried to avoid the battle in hundreds and hundreds of ways. And Duryodhana was hell-bent on fighting. Arjuna had trained his whole life as a martial artist, a military person, to support Dharma and to protect the innocent. And in this case, the innocent were being violated. So he had to go to war. And some may say, how does spiritual books start off on a battlefield? Well, life is like that, isn't it? And there will be attackers. There will be those who try to take away your God-given freedoms and so forth. So there's a way in which humility doesn't mean to just give up and become limp and give in to bullies. Humility means to follow Dharma, to follow what's right. And someone may say, well, what's right and wrong? Well, that's another subject matter, but there is even in some sense of postmodernism, there is a sense of there are ethics and laws that people should follow. If you lose that, you lose everything. So you have to find out what is your duty in life. Part of it is to stay alive. If somebody comes to kill your body, then it's your duty to protect yourself. And that's not being unhumble. It's actually trying to do your duty to the best of your ability, which is really part of what humility is act for a higher cause and not for your own selfish reasons. JM, it brought us to the 1 o'clock mark. I'm really grateful to everybody who came today. Thank you very much. Good to see you all. It's a beautiful time of year, the autumn. Seasons are changing. It always sneaks up, but so does life in all different ways. And we can just remember that every day we have in this human body, even despite the miseries, it's a great opportunity to advance ourselves to the next level spiritually, even if it's one tiny step at a time. It's consequential. We never lose that progress. And we're all passing through this world for a higher reason. And that's why we're all here. And that reminds me of my friends, JM, high in the Himalayas, the yogis who go into caves. I couldn't live in a cave, but they like it. And they do come out for the sunshine and also to gather some fruits and roots. And when they see their colleagues high on the mountain peaks, they feel joyful. And to express their appreciation for their colleagues' practice and dedication, they have this way of encouraging one another by raising their hands high in the air, and they call out this phrase, Hari Bol, which means, yeah, keep at it, keep the vibration going. I feel like we should do that since we're kind of like yogis in little cave-like Zoom rooms. Shall we try it? I'm doing it. Haribol!
Haribol.
Haribol!
Haribo.
Thanks, everybody. See you soon. Have a great weekend.